Your empathy is being weaponized. You feel it somewhere deep in your gut. That ache when you help someone and they turn on you. That confusion when kindness leads to being used. That silent question echoing in your heart, did I do the right thing? Or did I just let someone walk all over me again? We grow up believing empathy is a superpower. But what happens when that superpower becomes a target? What happens when your light attracts not just the lost, but the manipulative? Let me tell you something. I've had moments where I gave so much of myself, thinking I was lifting people up, but I was just handing them the tools to pull me down. You know, I've learned it the hard way that empathy doesn't always mean you're safe. It doesn't mean you're respected. And it sure doesn't mean you're immune to being played. Sometimes it means you become the exact thing someone wants to exploit. This is real talk right now. If you're the kind of person who naturally feels the pain of others, who sees a person suffering and wants to jump in and fix it, this video, this moment is for you. Because the truth is, your empathy is beautiful, but it can be turned against you like a loaded weapon in the wrong hand. I want you to understand something clearly. You can be kind without being a fool. You can be compassionate and still keep your power. And now look, empathy is what makes us human. It's how we connect, how we bond, how we love. But if we don't learn how to use it wisely, it becomes the very reason we keep ending up in the same painful cycle, giving, forgiving, breaking, and repeating. The ones who manipulate the kindest souls, they don't come in like villains. No, they come in like victims, like someone you want to save. And then suddenly they've taken control of your emotions, your time, your energy, and you don't even see it happening. Let me paint this picture. It's like inviting someone into your home because they looked cold. And before you know it, they're rearranging your furniture, changing your locks, and making you feel guilty for wanting your own space back. You see what I'm saying? That's how narcissists use empathy. They don't steal your strength, they redirect it. They use your own goodness as a leash. But here's what nobody tells you. Boundaries are not the opposite of empathy. They're the armor for it. A lot of people confuse being open-hearted with being wide open. Now you can feel deeply and still protect yourself. You can understand someone's pain without carrying it for them. And you can love somebody without losing yourself in the process. You gotta learn where you end and they begin. Because empathy without edges, that's just self-sacrifice in disguise. Now listen, because we're just getting started. In this video, we're gonna break down exactly how to spot when your empathy is being manipulated, the psychology behind why narcissists target empathic people, and the truth about the emotional traps you've probably walked into without even realizing it. You're gonna leave with more than just awareness, you're gonna leave with armor. Let's talk about the setup, all right? Let's talk about how your empathy becomes a weapon. Becomes a weapon because it don't happen overnight. It's slow, strategic. First, it starts with you open-hearted, caring, always seeing the best in people. That's your gift. But then someone walks in, sees that light in you, and they start to shape it. Not honor it, not protect it, or shape it to fit their needs. It's like this: imagine you're a river, always flowing, always giving. And someone puts a dam in your path. They don't stop you all at once. They just start controlling where you flow, how much you give, and to whom. And before you know it, they're deciding your direction. That's what happens when narcissists find someone with deep empathy. They know you will understand their excuses. They know you'll forgive when they push. They know you'll blame yourself when they twist things around. See what is empathy? It's the ability to feel someone else's emotion like it's your own. It's walking into a room and sensing someone's mood without a word being said. It's putting yourself in their shoes before you even look at your own feet. That's a rare gift. But when someone with narcissistic tendencies meets someone with that gift, man, It's like they found a gold mine. They start small and left bombing, praise, making you feel like you're the only one who gets them. And because you feel things deeply, you take that connection seriously. But then comes the subtle manipulation. They guilt trip you when you pull back. They make you feel selfish when you set a boundary. They turn every disagreement into your fall and every moment of peace into a debt you owe them. And you begin to wonder, am I the problem? I've seen it and I've lived it. People who smile with their mouths but lie with their actions. People who make you question your own truth while asking you to understand theirs. The irony is, the more empathy you give, the more they expect. And when you finally need something back, they vanish. Or worse, they punish you for needing them at all. That's not love. That's not partnership. That's control. Let me break this down in a way that hits home. When you try to love a narcissist with your empathy, it's like trying to fill a bottomless pit with water from your own well. You'll drain yourself dry trying to quench a thirst that was never meant to be satisfied. And here's what's worse, they'll blame you when the well runs dry. That's isolate trains you. It makes you scared to speak up. It makes you feel like protecting yourself is hurting someone else. And that's where you lose power. That's when your empathy turns into a cage. Not because you're weak, but because you're giving your energy to someone who thrives on keeping you uncertain, off balance, and emotionally tired. You ever feel like you're always the one apologizing, even when you're not sure what you did wrong? Like you're constantly explaining yourself, trying to prove your good intentions, trying to earn a respect that should have been mutual from the jump. That ain't love. That ain't growth. That's emotional survival. That's trying to keep the peace while walking on eggshells. And don't get it twisted, narcissists and empathy go hand in hand. Not because they give it, but because they hunt for it. They seek out people who'll bend, break, and rebuild just to keep the relationship alive. And here's the chilling part, they know exactly what they're doing. They know that every time they cry, you'll comfort. Every time they withdraw, you'll chase. Every time they explode, you'll shrink. And that's not random. That's design. Now hear me on this. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious, because once you see the pattern, once you realize how your strength is being twisted against you, you change the game. You stop handing out pieces of your soul to people who never intended to value it. You start guarding your empathy like the treasure it is. We're just getting warmed up. In the next part, I'm going to show you how to reverse the role show to shift the power dynamic without losing your kindness, and how real empathy always includes yourself. All right, so here's where things start to flip. This is the part where the pain becomes power, where you stop asking, why do they keep doing this to me? And you start asking, why do I keep allowing it? That right there, that's the game changer. That's the turning point, because when your empathy is being weaponized, the most dangerous part isn't them, it's your silence. It's the part of you that thinks loyalty means tolerating pain. Now I want you to picture something. Imagine you're carrying a golden light, warm, radiant, healing, and everywhere you go, people feel it. You shine on them. That light is your empathy. But what happens when someone takes that light and uses it to blind you? That's the trick narcissists use. They make your gift your weakness. They make your light the reason you can't see their darkness. But let me say this loud and clear. Real empathy doesn't erase your instincts. It's not supposed to make you ignore red flags. It's not supposed to make you stay where your soul is shrinking. And it's sure as hell not meant to silence your voice just to keep the peace. You gotta stop feeling guilty for walking away from people who never intended to meet you halfway. You gotta stop apologizing for choosing you. And let's be honest, people with deep empathy, we were taught to be the better person. Turn the other cheek, be understanding. But they never told us what to do when the other person keeps slapping. They never told us that being the better person and doesn't mean being the broken one. Look, empathy without self-respect becomes emotional slavery. You start calling it love, but deep down, it's fear of being alone, fear of being seen as cold, fear of letting someone down. But you ain't here to be a martyr. You're here to live fully. You're here to protect your peace like your life depends on it, because emotionally it does. Now, I know what you're thinking. You don't want to become hard. You don't want to stop caring. But here's the truth: protecting your empathy doesn't mean becoming cold. It means learning how to warm yourself first. Still feel for people. You can still help them, but you don't abandon yourself in the process. You start shifting when you realize this. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. Empathy isn't a contract, it's a gift. And when you start seeing it that way, you stop giving it to those who haven't earned it. That's where your freedom begins. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop chasing closure from those who benefit from your confusion. Look, when you finally say enough, something powerful happens. Your silence becomes sacred. Your peace becomes non-negotiable. You stop needing to be the savior and you start becoming your own. That's not selfish. That's healing. That's the part where your empathy grows with you, not against you. I remember times in my own life when I kept giving to people who showed me over and over that they couldn't handle what I gave. And the hardest part wasn't walking away, it was forgiving myself for staying so long. But growth ain't about blame. It's about learning. You don't shame the version of you that gave too much, you honor them. If it ain't them, can you rise? Empathy becomes dangerous when it forgets itself. But once you remember that you matter just as much as anyone else in the room, man, that's when the weapon they used against you breaks in your hands. In the next part, I'm going to give you something real practical: signs, patterns, and behaviors that narcissists use to exploit your empathy. You need to see it clearly, because once you do, you'll never unsee it again. All right, now we get into the stuff they don't want you to know. The game behind the game. The silent strategies. The patterns narcissists use to twist the beauty of your empathy into something they can control. And here's what's wild: they don't need to raise their voice to dominate you. They don't need to hit to hurt. All they need is your heart, and they'll you sit like a remote control if you let them. Let's start with the first red flag: inconsistency. 1 minute they're love bombing you, texting nonstop, complimenting you, making you feel like the center of the universe. You think, finally, someone who sees me. But then radio silence, cold shoulder, confusion. And what do? You lean in harder. You question yourself. You try to bring back that high. That's not love. That's emotional bait. That's the hook narcissists throw to real empathic people in it. Second, gaslighting. You start to feel like your reality is slipping. You say, "You heard me when you said that," and they come back with, "You're too sensitive," or "That never happened." And slowly, piece by piece, you stop trusting your own mind. You question your memory, your instincts, your emotions. You begin to think maybe you are the problem. That's not by accident, that's the design. Because a person who doubts themselves is easier to control. Third, triangulation. They bring other people into your bond, not to support you, but to isolate you. Suddenly, they're praising someone else just a little too loudly, comparing you, making you feel replaceable. Or they create conflict between you and people you trust so they can stay in the middle with all the power. And the deeper your empathy, the more you try to fix it. But you're fixing a game that was rigged from the start. Fourth, the moderate. Every time you try to draw a line, they become the victim. You express a boundary, and now you're the cruel one. You say, "I need space," and suddenly they're abandoned. And because you're empathetic, you backtrack. You comfort them. You just stay. But let me tell you something, if someone treats your healing like harm, that's manipulation. Real connection allows room for both people's truth, not just theirs. Fifth, emotional fatigue. This one sneaks up on you. You feel tired, not physically, but spiritually. You lose your energy. You lose your joy. It becomes a full-time job just to keep the peace. You censor yourself. You overthink every word. You start walking on eggshells and calling it balance. But it's not balance. It's burnout. And empathy should never lead to emotional exhaustion. That's not the cost of love, that's the symptom of abuse. Let me pause right here and say this: just because someone is broke and doesn't mean they get to break you. You are not a repair shop for people who refuse to grow. You are not responsible for fixing what someone else keeps choosing to destroy. That's not empathy. That's self-destruct. Swear to smile. I've seen people I love fall into these traps. I've been one of those people. And the thing that kept us stuck wasn't a lack of intelligence, it was a surplus of empathy. We felt too much. We gave too much. We hoped too long. And in the process, we lost sight of the most important person in the story, ourselves. But here's the truth that changes everything. Empathy must start with you. Your energy, your boundaries, your peace. When someone tries to distort your kindness, you don't fight them, you reclaim yourself. You remove the access. You walk away with your head high, not because they're worthless, but because you finally remember your worth. And let me be real, it's not always easy, especially when you've built your identity around caring for others. But protecting your soul is not selfish. It's survival, and it's sacred, because when you protect your empathy, you amplify it. You make it stronger. You give it to the people who actually honor it. And suddenly, life feels lighter, clearer. Hold again. Coming up next, I'm going to help you build a new code. A mindset rooted in empathy but shielded by wisdom. This is where you rise. This is where the script flips. You made it this far for a reason. Not just to hear some truths, but to build a new way of moving through the world. You already know your empathy is powerful. You already feel that tug inside you every time someone's hurting. That's not weakness, that's a gift. But here's what nobody taught you: your gift needs structure. Your compassion needs a gate. Otherwise, it leaks into the wrong places and floods your peace. So now let's flip the script. Let's talk about how to protect your empathy without hardening your heart. Let's build a new code, one that gives from overflow, not from emptiness. Rule number 1, check the intention before you invest the emotion. Before you go deep into somebody's chaos, stop and ask, is this person looking for healing or attention? See, narcissists don't want healing. They want your energy to orbit their problems. They want to be understood, but never want to change. And if you're not careful, your empathy turns into emotional servitude. You'll be solving puzzles they don't want solved. You'll be drowning just to keep them dry. But when you stop reacting emotionally to manipulation, you stop the pattern. You take the power back, not by screaming, not by blaming, but by standing in your stillness. That stillness is your new strength. Rule number 2, no more explaining your boundaries. You can set a limit and keep walking. You don't owe a paragraph. You don't owe permission. You are not rude for protecting your peace. You're not cold for cutting off energy leaks. Think about it. Do you keep opening the door for someone who keeps spitting on your floor? No? So why do you keep letting the same energy into your emotional space? I had to learn that the hard way. There were moments in my life where I was so scared of being misunderstood that I let people walk all over my spirit. I wanted peace, so I kept quiet. I wanted harmony, so I kept sacrificing my truth. But what I didn't realize back then is this peace that costs you your identity isn't peace at all. It's a wired oppression. Let me hit you with another one. Empathetic people need more solitude, not less. God, you gotta recharge. You gotta pull back. You need space to remember who you are outside of other people's pain. Empathy without solitude turns you into a sponge. You soak up everybody's emotions, but you forget to wring yourself out. And over time, you're carrying stuff that doesn't even belong to you. Now here's a game changer. Start observing patterns, not promises. Don't fall for the words. Watch the behaviors. People will say anything to keep your empathy locked in. I'll change. I didn't mean it. You're overreacting. But patterns don't lie. If they always come around when they need something, but vanish when you do, that's a pattern. If every conversation leaves you drained, not seen, that's a pattern. And if the only time they show love is when you pull away, that's a cycle, not a connection. You see what we're doing here? We're not just reacting anymore. We're reading a room. We're moving from emotional reflex to conscious response. And that's the real power of an empath who wakes up. You still feel it all, but now you respond from wisdom. Now let me tell you something important. Some people are gonna call this selfish. Some are gonna say you changed. And you know what? They're right. You finally stopped leaking your worth. You finally stopped giving access to people who only show up to take. You finally put your heart behind a healthy filter. And listen, it doesn't make you hard. That makes you wise. You know, when I was younger, I used to think strength meant being the loudest, the boldest, the one who held everything together. But the older I get, the more I see that real strength is quiet discernment. It's feeling the pain, but not getting swallowed by it. It's loving people, but knowing when to let go. It's standing tall not for applause, but for your own sanity. That's what you're building right now. A version of empathy that's aligned, focused, and unshakable. That's what it means to have a powerful heart and a sharp mind. And in the next part, we're going to talk about the moment you start rising, how to deal with the fallout when you finally say no more. What happens when you choose peace and the people who thrived off your pain can't handle it? Now here's what nobody tells you when you start healing. The people who benefited from your wounds start panicking. The moment you stop being their emotional sponge, they'll act like you changed. And they're right, you did. And evolution threatens those who stayed comfortable feeding off the old version of you. You ever notice how some folks only show love when you're broken, when you're doubting yourself, when you're questioning your worth, when you're unsure? They're there playing hero. But when you start speaking with clarity, when you begin to say no, when your energy shifts, they disappear. Or worse, they get angry. That's because your healing took away their leverage. This is when you'll see the real face of some relationships. They'll call you selfish, cold, arrogant. But understand this, they're not upset because you hurt them. They're upset because you stopped letting them hurt you. And that's the turning point. When you finally see that some people don't love you, they love your compliance. They love your silence. They love the control your empathy gave them. So what do? You stay grounded. You let your actions speak. You don't argue with folks committed to misunderstanding you. You just live differently. You love differently. You protect yourself differently. Because now you've outgrown the emotional contracts that were written when your self-worth was on sale. And I know it's painful to realize some of the closest people in your life were only close to your wounds. But freedom doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with empty rooms. Sometimes it comes with quiet exits, and that's okay. That's part of the shift. That's part of choosing healing over habits. Let me give you something I live by now. Not everyone deserves access to your empathy. See, empathy is sacred. It's your inner light. You don't just hand it out like flyers. You don't keep throwing it into black holes hoping it'll be enough. You give it where it's nurtured, not where it's manipulated. And when you do that, when you start being intentional with your empathy, your life changes. Your conversations change. Your relationships evolve. Your circle tightens, but it becomes solid. And suddenly, you don't feel tired all the time. You don't feel drained after every interaction. You stop questioning your worth every night before you fall asleep. That's what happens when your empathy finally aligns with self-respect. Now hear me, this doesn't mean you stop caring. This doesn't mean you become cold. You're still that same beautiful soul who feels deeply. But now you discern deeply too. You don't just ask, how can I help? You ask, is this my responsibility? You don't just jump and you evaluate. You observe. That's how you stop letting your empathy be weaponized. Because once you recognize the patterns, once you build boundaries, and once you stop apologizing for evolving, your empathy becomes a superpower. Not a weakness, not a leash, a strength that lifts you just as much as it lifts others. And you know what's crazy? When you shift, you attract differently. You start meeting people who see you not just what you can do for them. People who give without keeping score. People who honor your boundaries instead of punishing you for them. People who nurture your empathy, not use it. That's the kind of love you were born for. But you don't find that till you stop settling for emotional crumbs. You don't find it until you stop bleeding in places where you're not even being fed. So hold that line, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because the new version of you to heal, wise, empowered empath is just getting started. And in the next part, I'm going to show you how to walk forward with all that strength. How to build a life where your empathy serves your mission, not other people's manipulation. Let's be real, once you stop letting your empathy get hijacked, you start living in a whole new reality. Things that used to pull you in, they don't even register the same. People who once drained you, they stop calling. Why? Because you finally stopped showing up for your own mistreatment. And that energy speaks louder than words. See, when you heal, your silence gets expensive. You don't chase, you don't argue, you don't beg. You just move differently. You choose peace like it's Sarah. You walk away from the fire instead of trying to save people who lit the match. And let me tell you, there's nothing more powerful than someone who can love deeply, but no longer tolerates disrespect. You start to become someone new. But here's the beauty, you're not actually becoming someone else. You're becoming who you were before life conditioned you to shrink. Before guilt taught you that saying no made you heartless. Before trauma told you that love had to be earned through pain. Now, you're returning to your truth. You're waking up to what empathy really is. So let's break it down. What is empathy when it's healthy? It's not just about feeling what others feel. It's about understanding without absorbing. It's about listening with presence, not losing your own voice. It's not I'll carry your pain for you, it's I'll walk with you, but I won't bleed for you. That's real empathy. That's grown up, purpose-driven compassion. And when you build your life from that place, everything changes. Your decisions get clearer. Your relationships get richer. You stop giving time to things that don't grow you. And you start surrounding yourself with people who reflect your healing back to you. People who don't weaponize your empathy, but match it. People who see you not as a tool, but as a soul. I want you to think about this. There are people right now out there in the world who are healed enough to hold space for you the way you've held it for everyone else. But they won't find you if you keep staying where your value isn't seen. They won't meet you if you keep dimming your light to make others feel better about their shadows. You've got to level up your environment to match the level of empathy you carry. That might mean cutting ties. That might mean setting new standards. That might mean walking away from history to protect your destiny. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Because if you don't protect your peace, no one else will. Now let's talk about that inner critic, that voice that says, but if I stop being nice, who will love me? Listen to me, kindness is not the same as self-betrayal. You don't have to bleed to be loved. You don't have to abandon your needs to feel worthy. You were born with worth, and the right people, the real ones, they'll love your fire, your boundaries, your growth, your no's and your yeses. Because those things, they show you value yourself. Let's talk real quick about empathy and narcissists again. They hate boundaries, they hate mirrors, and they hate silence because silence forces them to hear their own echo. So when you stop reacting, when you stop feeding that cycle, they panic. But that's not your emergency to respond to. That's their healing to face, and they might not. But that's not on you. You didn't come here to carry their denial. You came here to live in truth. And look, there's no trophy for who sacrifices the most. There's no gold medal for exhaustion. No award for how long you tolerated emotional manipulation. But there is peace. There is joy. There is freedom waiting for you once you decide to stop watering relationships and only grow your wounds. This part right here, this is where everything turns. Where you stop asking for permission to live free. Where you realize empathy doesn't mean being available to everyone. It means being aligned with your purpose. Because the truth is this, when you protect your empathy, when you move with intentional love, you give the world something real. Not a burned out shell, not a people pleaser, but a whole grounded, present version of yourself. That version, it doesn't get weaponized. It builds, it heals, it leads. Let me leave nothing unsaid. If your whole life you've been the one who shows up, who listens, who forgives first, this message is for you. If you've ever found yourself in the middle of the night wondering why being kind feels like a curse, this is your confirmation your empathy was never the problem. It was the hands it kept falling into. But that ends now, because you're not the same. You've outgrown the narrative that told you love meant sacrifice without limit. That said, just be nice while people walked over your soul. That whisper, if they're hurting, you owe them grace while your own heart kept breaking. Now those days, done? You see, people like us, we grew up thinking being good meant being agreeable. We didn't want to rock the boat. We wanted peace. But somewhere along the way, we became so focused on maintaining harmony that we forgot to maintain ourselves. We let our boundaries get trampled in the name of loyalty. We mistook guilt for compassion, and we gave and gave until we were too tired to even recognize who we were outside of other people's needs. But here's what changed everything for me. I realized that empathy doesn't mean I let anyone treat me like I'm disposable. It doesn't mean I absorb every emotion around me like it's my job. It means I understand others, but I don't lose myself in the process. It means I feel deeply, but I choose wisely. Because your heart is not a doormat. Your spirit is not a trash can for other people's chaos. And you know what's wild? Once you reclaim your empathy, people start to accuse you of being different. They say you've changed. They say you're distant. And they're right. You have changed. You're no longer emotionally available for dysfunction. You're no longer open for manipulation wrapped in soft words. You're no longer the person who prioritizes peace over truth. And that bothers the ones who relied on your silence. But listen to me, don't shrink back just because your growth makes someone else uncomfortable. Your boundaries are not up for debate. Your healing isn't a negotiation. If they walk away because you stop letting your empathy be weaponized, let them. Let the door swing, because what's ahead of you, it's bigger than people pleasing. It's better than emotional survival. It's deeper than fake connections that cost your peace. Let me show you something. You ever seen a tree that's been through a storm, but is still standing, maybe bent, maybe scarred, but rooted? As you now. You've been through it. You've been used, misunderstood, taken for granted. But you're still here. And now you're not bending anymore. You're growing upward. You're claiming sunlight. You're building fruit, not just shelter. So here's what you do from here on out. You choose relationships that feel like clarity, not confusion. You say no without guilt. You say yeses without fear. You stop explaining your worth to people committed to seeing you small. You keep your empathy, but now it's guarded by wisdom. You don't rescue adults from consequences they chose. That's the new you, the whole empath. Not broken, not bitter, just clear. Let's talk about what empathy really looks like in this new season. It looks like asking, is this my emotion or theirs? It looks like feeling someone's pain, but not owning it. It looks like supporting people without setting yourself on fire. It looks like compassion with boundaries. That's not being heartless, that's being healthy. That's what mature empathy looks like. And let me tell you, it's magnetic. It's powerful. It attracts the kind of relationships that don't just use your heart, they honor it. Look, life is short. Too short to keep pouring your spirit into empty cups. Too short to keep apologizing for being sensitive. Too short to keep repeating the same cycles with people who have no intention of growing. You've got too much purpose to waste on emotional traps. So today, you take your empathy back. You give it a direction. You let it serve your mission, not someone else's manipulation. You protect it like it's sacred, because it is. And in doing so, you unlock a version of you that's been waiting all this time. The version that doesn't just feel life, but builds it, shapes it, commands it. That's the gift. That's the truth. That's the fire you carry. So the next time someone tries to call you cold for setting boundaries, smile. Because you're not cold. You're clear. You're not mean. You're focused. You're not selfish. You're self-aware. And that difference, that's everything. Let them say what they want. You keep walking in your light because your empathy is no longer there to lit your power. And now you use it to build a life that loves you back. This is Wisdom Recorder, your knowledge source. If this message hit home, like, share, and subscribe for more. Because the world doesn't need more broken empaths, it needs healed ones who know their worth. Stay strong, stay grounded,